Eduardo Streichman, and tonight we'll be presenting our senior design, which is the Rio 2016 Olympic Tennis Stadium. To begin our presentation, give you an introduction on the Summer Olympic Games and the location where the next edition of the Games will be played. We'll then define our problem statement, our requirements and specifications, and limitations and constraints. We'll follow that with our conceptual design, our alternatives evaluation, our architectural model, and finally, our structural analysis and design.
The city of Rio de Janeiro, located in Brazil, is going to host the 31st Summer Olympic Games in 2016. The Olympics is one of the most important sports events in the world. Even though some of the existing sporting facilities in the city of Rio are going to be used for the Olympics, most of the venues are not yet constructed for the Games. So the city is not yet prepared to receive the Games. Rio de Janeiro is located in the southeast corner of Brazil, on the beach side. The city is going to have 4 sites of competition: the Barra Zone, the Copacabana Zone, the Maracanã Zone, and the Deodoro Zone. The tennis competitions will be played in the Barra Zone. Inside the Barra Zone, there are going to be many venues for competitions. The Olympic Tennis Center will be located in the Rio Olympic Park. The Rio Olympic Park is going to be constructed in the shore of the Jacarepaguá Lagoon, where nowadays there is a racing track. This vision model, given by the Brazilian Olympic Committee, shows the venues inside the Rio Olympic Park, with the Tennis Olympic Center right in the shore of the lagoon.
Although the Olympic Tennis Center has 3 stadiums and 13 ground courts, the objective of this project is to develop the structural design of the center court stadium only, taking into consideration mainly safety, aesthetics, and economical characteristics. The stadium must have 120 feet by 60 feet clear space at the center, which is the minimum area needed for the court. It's also required by the Brazilian Olympic Committee that the stadium must have a capacity for at least 10,000 seated spectators. Regarding the structure analysis and design part, our steel frame design followed the provisions given by the American Institute of Steel Construction. Our concrete frame design follows the ACI Code 318, which is given by the American Concrete Institute. And our loadings are based on the International Building Code and the ACI 705 Code, which is given by the American Society of Civil Engineers. The Brazilian Olympic Committee defined a budget for the construction of the entire Olympic Tennis Center, but they did not specify how much of that money would be directed to the construction of the center court stadium only. Therefore, we analyzed several different aspects of the facilities, such as their capacity and importance for the games. And we also got information from Brazilian specialists in stadium construction, and we came up with a budget of $25 million for the construction of the center court stadium only. But since we are only doing the structural design of the stadium, we further divided that $25 million into 75% for materials and labor for the structure and 25% for equipment and finish, which is not included in our project. Lastly, the stadium must be tested in an official event before the Olympic Games. Therefore, it must be ready by the 2nd semester of 2015 in order to be tested in the ATP Rio 500.
After the problem statement was defined and the limitations and constraints were stated, we generated 4 conceptual designs in order to find the best design to go with in our project. Alternative 1 is a simple rectangular concrete structure with no cover for the stands or roof for the court. Alternative 2 is a rectangular steel structure with rounded corners, concrete grandstands, a partial cover for the top level of seating, and an external illuminated glass finish in the outside of the stadium. Alternative 3 is a completely covered circular steel structure with concrete grandstands. Alternative 4 is a rectangular steel structure with rounded corners, concrete grandstands, a cover for the top level of seats, and the retractable roof that can be closed in 20 minutes in case of rain or strong winds. In order to compare the alternatives, we generated a table with the characteristics of all the alternatives. This table has characteristics such as shape, stands material, cover, cost, maintenance cost, and many others. In order to find the best design to go with in our project, we made a decision matrix where we rated the design goals from the most important to less important, giving a weight factor for them. In each design goal, we rated the alternatives from 1 to 4, 1 being the worst and 4 being the best for that design goal. Then, we multiplied the value from 1 to 4 we gave in each design goal with the relative weight factor we gave for the goal in order to get a final result for each alternative. The decision matrix shows for us that the alternative 2 was the best one to use in our design. I got a value for 1,740. Then, using a software called Autodesk Maya 3D, we generated an architectural model of the entire complex using the alternative 2 as the center court stadium. The Brazilian Olympic Committee proposed the Olympic Tennis Center to have a center court stadium with a capacity for 10,000 seated spectators. A Court 1 stadium with a capacity for 5,000 seated spectators. Fast food concessions and stores for the public to have comfort while they're watching the games. A Court 2 stadium with a capacity for 3,000 seated spectators. The less important games of the Olympics are going to be played in 6 ground courts that have a capacity for only 250 people. Finally, the complex also has 7 practice courts for the players to practice before the Olympics start and for them to warm up before their games in the Olympics. As it was said before, the Olympic Tennis Center is located right in the shore of the Jacarepaguá Lagoon. The service area of the center court stadium has mainly 3 floors. The public will access the stadium through the doors in the glass and then walk through the corridors in order to get to their seats. The first floor is focused on the players. It has the players' locker rooms, trainers' room, press conference room, and press mix zone. It also has restrooms and concessions for the public, but the public will have to go through stairs and elevators to get to the 2nd and 3rd floor in order to get to their seats. The 2nd floor has the access for the media center, for the media journalists to broadcast the games to the world. The 2nd and 3rd floor have concessions and restrooms all around for the public comfort. In order to get to their seats, the public will have to go through 12 corridors, 6 located in the 2nd floor and 6 located in the 3rd floor. In order to get to the capacity needed for the stadium, we generated a capacity calculation that gave us the value for 30 rows needed in the grandstand in order to get to 10,000 seats. We divided the 30 rows into 3 sections. The first section with 5 rows of blue chairs, the second with 10 rows of yellow chairs, and the third with 15 rows of green chairs. The media center is going to be located in between the 2nd and 3rd level of seating, behind the dark tinted glass for them to broadcast their games in their press box. The 3rd level of seating is protected by the aluminum cover, which is supported by a system of steel trusses. The steel trusses are supported by the exterior columns of the stadium. The final height of the stadium was calculated to be 72 feet tall, due to the rise of the steps to the grandstand, the floor for the media, and the safety height needed for people not to access the truss. The top view of the model shows the distribution of the courts in the Tennis Olympic Center.
The loads considered in the analysis and design were dead and live load, which are gravity loads, and wind load, which is a lateral load. All the loads were based on the ACI 705 code. So analyzing the code, we found that the dead load that should be considered is the self weight of the structure plus any load caused by fixed surface equipment such as the chairs for the stands. The code specifies a live load of 60 PSF for the stands area, 100 PSF for the circulation areas, and 125 PSF for the light storage areas. We further increased the 60 PSF load for the stands area by 30% to account for impact loads that might be caused by the spectators. And that's why you see the 78 PSF value in this slide. The code also has a procedure to calculate the wind pressure that must be considered. Therefore, we performed all the calculations and we found that value to be 36 PSF at the maximum elevation of the stadium. Then, all those loads are applied to the analysis and design using the load and resistance vector design load combination. The structural system of the stadium can be divided into two main systems that are connected to each other. The first one you see on the bottom left is mainly consisted of reinforced concrete slabs, beams, and columns. And that's why we refer to it as the concrete system. The one you see on the bottom right is mainly consisted of ASTM A992 steel W sections, which are shown in green in this figure. The exception is the aluminum roof cover, which is shown in purple, and the corridor slab, which is shown in blue and is made of reinforced concrete. So take a closer look at the concrete system. In this figure, all the beams are represented with a letter B and a number, all the slabs with a letter S and a number, and all the columns with a letter C and a number. How the system works is basically the gravity loads are applied to the slabs, which transfer the loads to the beams, which then take them to the columns, which then take them to the foundation. The steel system, on the other hand, receives both gravity and lateral loads. For the gravity load, there are two cases. The first one is the gravity load coming from the roof. That load is transferred to purlins that are connecting the trusses. So the purlins take the loads from the roof, take them to the trusses, which then take them to the exterior columns, which then take them to the foundation. The second case is the gravity load coming from the corridor slab. That load is supported by a system of floor beams, which are supported by girders. So the girders take the load and transfer them to the exterior columns, which again take them to the foundation. The lateral wind load is directly resisted by X-bracing systems that are symmetrically placed in both the short and in the long direction of the stadium. The concrete system design was performed by hand by taking into consideration the critical member of each group and then designing for that member and using that design for all the members in that particular group. One of our main concerns while performing the concrete system design was to find the optimum solution between the labor cost and material cost. Since labor costs are usually higher than material costs, we tried to minimize that as much as we could, although that might have increased the material cost at some point. So in order to do that, we tried to use the same sections as much as we could, and when we had to change the section, we tried to maintain that as similar as possible to the one that we already had. We also limited the steel reinforcing bar numbers to 5 sizes only to the entire stadium. So for the slabs, all the slabs were designed as simply supported, with the exception of slab S2. The parameters we defined for the slabs were the thickness, the main reinforcement, and the reinforcement needed for shrinkage and temperature. So we further divided this table with 4 thick lines, and if you pay close attention to those sections, you see that all the slabs are actually identical and they have the same steel reinforcement, with the exception of slab SC. The beams were all designed as simply supported, and they were designed based on flexure, shear, and deflection criteria. So, following the same logic, we defined all the beams to have rectangular cross-section, and once again, we limited the steel reinforcement bar sizes to 4 sizes only in this case. For the column design, we again defined all the columns to have square cross-sections and have lateral ties. So once again, we divided this table with thick lines, and if you pay close attention to each of those groups, you will see that the columns are very similar, having the same size and very similar steel reinforcement. The steel system design, on the other hand, was performed using the ETABS analysis and design software, which is very, 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 very powerful for steel frame design. Although we only analyzed and designed the steel system on ETABS, we also drew the concrete system on the software to allow accurate load placement and distribution. as well as accurate results when running the analysis. So once we drew the model, we had to make sure that it was behaving as we expected and the results are accurate. Therefore, we analyzed the form shape and the first 3 mode shapes given by the software, just to make sure that all the members were connected and that the structure was behaving as we expected. We also performed hand calculations to some key elements in the structure where we knew the forces and we knew the stresses, so we could make sure that the results given by the software were matching our hand calculations for those members. So in the slide, you can see the form shape that we analyzed. So now that we checked the model, we could then use the results given by the software. So ETABS give us the reactions and the deflections for each member, as well as their axial force, shear force, and moment diagram. So as you can see in the slide, here's an example of the axial force diagrams for all the members in the structure. In the bottom, you see an example of the moment diagrams for all the members in the structure as well. So now that we knew the forces and we knew the stresses in each of those members, we then divided the steel system into 13 groups. And then we analyzed each member of that group, and we found the critical member for that particular group. So then ETABS gave us the smallest section that could be used for that member. Then we took that section and we used for all the members in that particular group. So as you can see on the table, all the groups have only one unique section assigned to them, and they're all W sections.
The final model given by the ETABS software shows the concrete and the steel system working together. The final rendered image given by the Maya software shows the final architectural model of the center court stadium. In order to get to the cost of the structure, we used the help of the Brazilian specialists in stadium construction. They are currently working in the stadiums for the Soccer World Cup that is going to happen in Brazil in the next year. To get to the cost, we needed to find the quantities of all materials in the stadium, member by member of the structure. After we found the quantities, we used the Brazilian prices for materials in order to get to a final cost of materials to be around $8 million. With the experience of the Brazilian specialists in stadium construction, we found out that usually in a Brazilian stadium, 45% of the cost of the structure is material cost, and 55% is labor cost. So we got a final labor cost for our structure to be around $9.8 million. So the final price of our structure will be around $18 million. To conclude our project, we found that the structure design is safe and comply with the required building codes. The final capacity of the stadium was found to be 10,568 seated spectators. The final cost of the structure was found to be $18 million, which is under the budget we have for $18.75 million. The structural system is a combination of reinforced concrete and steel. And finally, we found that the stadium is feasible to be constructed by 2015. We found that with the help of the Brazilian specialists in stadium construction. We would like to acknowledge our 2 advisors, Mohamed Al-Hassan and Andres Montenegro, for all the help throughout the project. We would also like to thank Dr. Suleiman Asher for the help in the 4 years of our undergraduate program. We would like to thank the 2 Brazilian specialists in stadium construction that helped us with the cost and schedule calculation for the project. We would like to thank João Leão Freitas, which is an interior design student at IPFW, for the help with ideas for the architectural model. We finally would like to thank the Studio M crew for the help with the animation for the presentation. Does anyone have any questions?
Okay, I saw your cost you using Brazilian money. For the standard, I saw you using American standards. Do you, I'm just checking,
Yeah.
should you use the Brazilian standards, right?
No,
for
we did
design?
use the American standards for the constructions because that's what we learned here. And all those standards are based on the International Building Code. So we also checked the Brazilian standards, and the code in Brazil is also based on International Building Code. So the codes are very similar. So there are little differences, but the codes in general are very similar. That's why we use the American code for our design.
And the cost, we got the cost from the Brazilian prices because that's more accurate for the Olympics. Since they're going to build in Brazil, we're not going to use, since steel is more expensive here than concrete, and in Brazil is the opposite. Because of the labor cost in Brazil is cheaper than material cost.
What was the time period for completing the stadium?
The Brazilian specialists, they said that they looked at our project, everything that we did in our project, and they said that our stadium could be built in 1 year. But it could be built in 1.5 years if we use less labor costs. But 1 year is the time they give for building the stadium.
Do you have design tool? I mean, you finish everything. What will be the work part? Next semester? Do you?
No, we are graduating this semester.
Oh,
This is only a design project.
okay.
Could you go to the slide of the decision matrix?
The process of finding the best alternative was bigger than only the decision matrix. We have many matrices to the relative weight factors, but this is the time of the presentation we only show this decision matrix.
Now you have as a criteria the SIFT. You get 1, 3, 4, 2, 3, and 4. What are the factors that you consider to be alternative in an outdoor sport as such?
So for the safety, the alternative one, since it doesn't have any cover or anything, we consider it being safer than the other alternatives, since the roof cannot fall into people, so it's a safer structure, having less complexity on it. For example, the alternative 4, we found out that it might not be safe because of the retractable roof. It could caught on fire or something like that, so because of the mechanism, it could be less safe than the other one. So we use, it's not that the structure wouldn't be safe for people to use, it's just to consider how will be the difference in between each other, being less or more safe than the other. But all the designs will be safe as in the structure is safe for people to use.
Now, public acceptance, how do you do that?
Because the Olympics is in Rio de Janeiro, which is a city with nice weather, we think that public will not accept a stadium that is completely covered. Because people like the weather of Rio and they like to enjoy having the sun and everything. So we thought that because of that, public wouldn't accept. And for example, alternative 1 is such a simple structure for an important event. So we thought that it is important that the stadium has to have something fancy, such as the illumination in the glass finish. So this is just something that we thought that was better. It's not something that we actually asked someone.
That's exactly my point. That should be decided by group of people, not you.
Yeah, okay, so.
I have
But-
just a small comment. You know that transparency that you have a labor cost? You just think that.
Actually, the labor cost, it was calculated based
I
on the materials cost,
That is
so.
my question.
Okay.
You see, it is over $9 million and 30%.
I mean,
It's not possible that accurate.
the material cost is exactly that cost. That's the cost of materials one by one. The labor cost,
My point is that when you make the presentation, you have a figure like 9 million. You really don't want it to be 30%.
okay. This was based on the materials cost. That's why we did it, but I just said around 9.8 just to make sure that no one.
Does the code have anything built into it, the fact that it's by the water, and you have the wind load there based on elevation, but certainly the wind must be different.
Yeah,
Based on the location.
the code does take in consideration if it's an open area, if it takes in consideration what it's around. And we have all the calculations actually for the wind load. And so it does take in consideration like where your structure is located. So here, for example, we consider first we found the wind speed in the region in Rio de Janeiro. Then you see all these factors, KZ, KZT, KD. These are all based on the code, and it varies depending on the location of the structure. So it varies. It's an open area. It does not say specifically if there's water on the side, but it takes in consideration what it is.
Yeah, and my other question, does it do anything for material because it's like by salt water or something like that? Is that?
No, we didn't know.
And this
did not think that.
The water here is not actually the ocean.
It's a lagoon, so it's not as big as it's shown in the
Okay.
Other questions?
For the rendering thing, software that you use, how you learn that, and how much time did it take you to finish this?
Well, I took an extra class besides my major here just to make the architectural model with Andres Montenegro. And it took around, I'll say 6 hours a day, working 5 to 6 days a week to do the architectural model. And the animation took me at least 3 weeks of working 5, 6 hours a day with the Studio M crew.
Yeah, for that final budget, the first one you had $2,008 for 25. Was that final one for $18 million and $2,008?
Yeah, that's in $2008 because it was evaluated by the Olympic Committee to be in 2008. So it actually could be higher or lower now. So we worked with the prices in 2008 because of that.
If time goes back now, and you know what you know, what things you will do differently and why on this project?
In which kind of way? When finding the alternative and
What is the most thing that you think you would change if time goes back and you have to do it again in this project?
I actually like a lot this project. And I'll actually, after we go back to Brazil and graduate, I'll actually talk. I tried to contact the Olympic Committee to try to use this project because they do not have a project yet. They have models, but they do not have a project, and they have to start construction this year in order to get done by the Olympics. So I mean, I actually like a lot our project.
We need 10% of design costs in the department.
Questions?
Questions? Thank you.